My name is Daniel Carter. I'm 32 years old. On the night of my birthday, I walked into my parents' house expecting nothing more than an awkward dinner. Maybe a cake, if they remembered. Instead, I walked into a courtroom. 200 people sat in rows of folding chairs, shoulder to shoulder, all facing the center of the room, like they were waiting for a verdict. Conversations died the second I stepped inside. Every head turned, every eye locked onto me. No decorations, no music, no cake. Just silence. My mother stood by the wall of family photos. Without looking at me, she reached up and pulled the first frame down. A picture of me at 5 years old. She tore it in half, then another, and another. Paper ripping echoed through the room. No one moved. My father stood from behind a long table, holding a microphone in one hand and a thick stack of papers in the other. For 32 years, he said, voice steady, we fed you, clothed you, paid for your education. He flipped to the last page. $400,000. A murmur spread through the crowd. That's what you cost us. My sister stepped in beside me, reached into my hand, and took my car keys like they already belonged to her. She smiled. Dad transferred it to me this morning. I didn't argue. I didn't react. I looked at all of them once, then turned and walked out. 4 days later, they were calling me 80 times a day. I didn't answer, and there's a reason for that. Before I tell you what really led to that night, take a second to like and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy stories like this. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, let me take you back to where this really started. Growing up in the Carter family, I learned early there were two categories of children: Olivia and everyone else. My father, Charles Carter, built a real estate empire from nothing. He measured everything in numbers, square footage, margins, returns. If something didn't produce value, it didn't matter. My mother, Linda, used to be a school teacher. By the time I was old enough to notice, she'd traded classrooms for charity events and dinner parties. Status mattered more than anything. Appearances were everything. And then there was Olivia, 4 years younger, perfect in every way that counted to them. Beautiful, charming, effortless. The kind of person people noticed the second she walked into a room. The kind of daughter they wanted. I remember the day I got a full scholarship into a pre-med program. I was 16, standing on stage, scanning the crowd for my parents. They weren't there. Olivia had a dance recital that afternoon. More important, my mother told me later, barely looking up from her phone. I didn't argue. I stopped expecting things after that. When I graduated from nursing school at 22, top of my class, my father barely acknowledged it. If you had gone into business like your sister, he said, you'd actually be useful to this family. It didn't matter that Olivia dropped out of her program 2 years later. It didn't matter that I was working night shifts in the ER while she burned through credit cards and called it networking. At family dinners, my mother would run her fingers through Olivia's hair like she was still a child. My beautiful girl, she'd say. Then she'd glance at me. You could learn something from your sister. I did learn. I learned that in this house. Love wasn't automatic. It was earned. And no matter what I did, I was never going to qualify. There was one exception, one person in that family who never measured me against anyone else. My grandmother, Margaret Carter. She lived in a small house on the edge of town. Nothing impressive, no grand entrance, no polished floors, no carefully curated image. Just quiet, real quiet, the kind you don't have to fight to exist in. When I told her I wasn't going into my father's business, that I wanted to work in emergency care instead, she didn't hesitate. She took my hands, steady and warm, and looked me straight in the eye. Taking care of people matters. Danny, she said, don't let anyone tell you otherwise. She was the only one who ever called me that. Danny, 3 years ago. She was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. 18 months, maybe 2 years, if everything went right. That's what the doctors said. My parents immediately started talking logistics. Full-time caregivers, facilities, costs. Olivia suggested a nursing home before the diagnosis was even fully processed. She said it like she was recommending a restaurant. I quit my job that week, packed what I needed, moved into my grandmother's house. For the next 3 years, my life narrowed down to schedules and small moments, medication times, doctor visits, long nights where sleep didn't come easy. I learned how to read pain before she said a word, learned how to sit in silence without trying to fix it. Learned that sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is just stay. Olivia came by twice, both times for less than an hour. My parents showed up once a month. 30 minutes, usually less, always in a rush, always somewhere else to be. But me and my grandmother, we built something real in those years. She told me stories about my grandfather, about the life she almost had before everything got redirected into duty and family. She talked about choices, about knowing who you are when no one else bothers to see it. She never told me to fight them. She just made sure I understood my own worth. 6 months ago, she passed in her sleep. I was there, sitting beside her bed, holding her hand. At the funeral, my mother pulled me aside like it was just another conversation to get through. "Don't act like you sacrificed something special," she said. "It's not like she left you anything." I didn't respond. Not because I agreed, because I already knew arguing wouldn't change anything. What I didn't know yet was how wrong she actually was. The first sign something was off came a week before my birthday. I was finishing a double shift at the ER, running on caffeine and muscle memory, when my phone buzzed in my pocket. Olivia. She never called, not unless she needed something. I stepped into the break room and answered. Dan. Her voice was wrong. Too soft. Too careful. Yeah. A pause. Then, "Have you gotten any mail from a lawyer? Something about Grandma's estate?" I leaned back against the wall, staring at the vending machine like it might answer for me. "No, just asking," she said quickly. Too quickly. Mom and Dad were wondering. I didn't respond. She shifted gears almost instantly. "Anyway, we're throwing you a birthday dinner at the house. Everyone's coming." I almost laughed. "In 32 years, I said. You've never thrown me a birthday anything." "We're trying to fix that," she replied. "After everything with Grandma, things have been off. We want to make it right." I hung up a minute later. Phone still in my hand. Danny found me like that 10 minutes later. He'd been my friend since nursing school. The closest thing I had to family that didn't come with conditions. They don't do things out of guilt. He said after I told him. They do things when there's something in it for them. You're reading too much into it. Am I? He held my gaze. They've ignored you your whole life. Now they want a big family dinner. Out of nowhere, I didn't answer. That night, lying in bed, I kept replaying Olivia's voice in my head. The question about the lawyer, the timing. Something didn't line up. 3 days later, I ran into Aunt Ruth at a grocery store near my place. She grabbed my arm before I could even say hello and pulled me toward the back aisle like we weren't supposed to be seen talking. "Do you know what Olivia's been doing?" she asked. "No. She and her husband went all in on crypto, some guaranteed return nonsense." Ruth shook her head. "They lost everything, close to 200,000. I felt something settle into place, not understanding just alignment. "Does Dad know he's scrambling?" she said, trying to cover it. "Loans, connections, whatever he can find." She tightened her grip slightly. "I shouldn't be telling you this, but you need to be careful." "Careful of what?" "They're not planning a birthday dinner." Her eyes met mine. No hesitation this time. "They're planning something else." I checked my mailbox that night for the first time in weeks. Bills, ads, junk mail, and one envelope that didn't belong with the rest. Heavy paper, cream-colored. Law offices of Gerald Whitmore. I opened it on the spot. Reading under the dim light outside my building. A formal request to meet. Something regarding my grandmother's estate. My name. Only my name. I stood there longer than I should have, turning the envelope over in my hands. Olivia asked about a lawyer. My parents were suddenly interested in family gatherings. Ruth warned me something was coming. And now this. I called the number, scheduled an appointment for the day after my birthday. Then I made a decision. I'd go to that dinner, whatever they were planning. I wasn't walking in blind this time. The night before my birthday, I didn't sleep. I lay on my back, staring at the ceiling, the room dark, except for the streetlight bleeding through the blinds. Too quiet. My mind didn't slow down. It never does when something's coming. I kept thinking about patterns. Not one moment, not one fight. All of it. When I was 20, my father bought Olivia a brand new BMW for her birthday. No discussion, no hesitation. I'd spent 3 years saving for a used pickup, paid every dollar myself. No one said a word about the difference. When I turned 25, 26, 27, my birthday passed like any other day. Sometimes my mother texted, sometimes she didn't. Olivia got trips, weekends away, celebrations that filled rooms. I got silence. 2 years ago, at Thanksgiving, Olivia told the whole table I wasn't smart enough for med school. That's why I settled for ER work. People laughed. I didn't correct her. At the time, I told myself it didn't matter, that I didn't need their approval, that keeping the peace was easier than starting something I couldn't win. That's what I always told myself, but lying there in the dark, I saw it clearer than I ever had. Every time I stayed quiet, I made it easier for them to define me. Every time I let something slide, I gave up ground I didn't get back. It wasn't maturity, it was erosion. Slow, consistent, effective. I reached over to the nightstand and picked up the last letter my grandmother gave me. I didn't need to read the whole thing. I already knew the line, live like you deserve to. I sat there for a while, the paper in my hands, letting that settle. No anger, no big emotional surge, just clarity. Whatever was waiting for me at that house the next day, I wasn't going to play my role anymore. I wasn't going to explain myself. I wasn't going to argue. And I wasn't going to shrink to make any of them comfortable. I folded the letter, set it back down, and turned off the light. Decision made. Less than 24 hours later, they gave me a reason to follow through. I pulled up to my parents' house 10 minutes before 7. The driveway was already full. Cars lined both sides of the street, spilling onto the neighbors' lawns. Too many for a dinner, too many for anything normal. I sat in the truck for a second, engine running, watching the house, lights on, every window. I texted Danny, I'm here, something's off. His reply came almost immediately, 2 blocks away, call if you need me. I stepped out, closed the door, walked up the driveway like I'd done 1,000 times before. The front door was unlocked. I pushed it open and stepped inside, and stopped. The living room had been cleared out, furniture pushed to the walls. In its place, rows of folding chairs, dozens of them, maybe 200, every seat filled. Facing the front of the room, facing me. The noise died the second I crossed the threshold. Conversations cut off mid-sentence. People turned. Some I recognized. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen in years. My father's business partners, neighbors, strangers filling empty space. No decorations, no music, no birthday. Anything. Just eyes. Watching. Olivia appeared at my side like she'd been waiting for me to step in. Her hand closed around my sleeve, gripped tighter than necessary. You're late, she said, smiling like this was normal. Traffic, I answered. She leaned in slightly. Everyone's been waiting. For what? You'll see. She didn't answer anything after that, just guided me forward through the rows. People shifted in their seats as we passed. No one spoke, no one smiled. I reached the front of the room. A long table, 3 chairs behind it. My parents were already seated, waiting. Olivia let go of my arm and stepped back, left me standing there, alone. Silence stretched. Then my father stood up. He picked up a microphone from the table, the kind used for wedding speeches, and tapped it once. The sound echoed through the room. Thank you all for coming, he said. His voice carried easily, controlled, practiced. This is a family matter, one that requires witnesses. Something cold settled in my chest. I scanned the room once, slow. Found Aunt Ruth in the back corner. She didn't look away, just gave a small shake of her head. My father turned toward me. For 32 years, he said, your mother and I have provided for you. I didn't interrupt, didn't move. Food, shelter, education, everything you needed. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick stack of papers, held them up like evidence. A full accounting, he continued. Every dollar spent on you since the day you were born. He flipped to the last page. Ran his finger down the column. $400,000. A ripple moved through the crowd. Low voices. Shifting seats. That's what you cost us, he said, eyes locked on mine. And that's what you owe. I let the silence sit for a second. Then, you're serious. Completely. He set the papers down in front of him. You have 2 options. Repay the full amount. He slid another document across the table. Or sign this. I didn't reach for it. What is it? A release, he said. You waive any claim to your grandmother's property. The house goes back to the family where it belongs. There it was, the reason for all of this. Before I could respond, my mother stood up. She walked over to the wall behind them, the wall covered in family photos, frames I'd grown up looking at. She took the first one down. A picture of me as a kid. You've always been ungrateful, she said. Then she tore it in half. The sound snapped through the room. She grabbed another. My graduation. You never appreciated what we gave you. Rip. Another. You only ever thought about yourself. Rip. The pieces fell to the floor around her feet. No one moved. No one said a word. Then she reached for one more. The last one that mattered. Me and my grandmother, taken a week before she died. I felt my jaw tighten. You manipulated her, my mother said quietly. Took advantage of a dying woman. She tore it, slow this time, letting it drag. The pieces dropped. I didn't react, didn't give them anything. Olivia stepped in beside me again. She reached into my pocket before I could stop her, pulled out my keys, held them up between her fingers. Oh, and this, she said, smiling. Dad already transferred it to me. I looked at the keys, then at her, then at my father. Everything lined up. The debt, the house, the desperation, all of it. I took a breath, steady, measured. Then I spoke. Did you read the will? My father frowned. What grandma's will? I said. Did you actually read it? I don't need to. I know how this works. I held his gaze. That's not what I asked. Something flickered across his face. Brief. Uncertainty. From the back of the room, I heard movement, people shifting, listening closer now. I turned slightly, looked at Olivia, how much her smile faltered. What the crypto? I said. How deep are you? Her face drained. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, I said. You do. The room started to murmur again, louder this time. Questions, confusion. My mother stepped forward. This isn't about her. No, I said. It isn't. I looked back at my father. You're asking me to sign away something you haven't even verified belongs to you. Silence. Heavy now. I glanced down at the torn photos scattered across the floor, at the document sitting untouched on the table, at the keys in my sister's hand, then back up. I'm not signing anything tonight. My father slammed his hand on the table. You sign that paper, or you're no longer part of this family. I nodded once, took that in. Then I turned, started walking toward the door. No one stopped me, not one of the 200 people in that room. Not my parents, not my sister, no one. The door was still open. I stepped outside, didn't look back. The night air hit different once the door closed behind me. Cool, quiet, real. I walked down the driveway without rushing. Gravel under my boots. Voices starting to rise behind me, muffled through the walls. Didn't matter. I didn't stop. Didn't turn around. Danny's car was parked exactly where he said it would be. Engine running, headlights off. I opened the passenger door and got in. Closed it for a second. Neither of us spoke. You good? He asked. I stared straight ahead. No. A beat, but I will be, he nodded once. Didn't ask anything else, just pulled away from the curb. We drove in silence for a while, streetlights passing in steady intervals. My phone started vibrating in my pocket before we hit the first intersection. I didn't check it, didn't need to. I already knew who it was. After a minute, I took it out, looked at the screen. Missed call, Dad, then another, and another. I turned the phone face down in my hand, let it buzz, let it keep buzzing. They expected you to fold, Danny said. Eyes on the road. Yeah, you didn't. No. Another pause. What changed? I thought about that for a second. The room. The papers. The way my mother tore those photos, like none of it ever meant anything. The way my father said 400,000, like I was a line item. The way Olivia smiled when she took my keys. Then something else. My grandmother's voice. Live like you deserve to. I stopped playing along. I said. Danny glanced at me, then back at the road. About time. We reached my apartment a few minutes later. He parked, killed the engine. I sat there for a second longer before getting out. The phone in my hand buzzed again. Still going. Relentless now. I checked it this time. Dozens of missed calls, messages stacking on top of each other. I didn't open any of them. Didn't respond. Inside, my place felt smaller than usual. Too quiet after everything that just happened. Danny dropped his keys on the counter and headed straight for the kitchen. Started making coffee like it was any other night. Routine. That helped. I leaned against the counter, watching the machine drip. You're not going to answer them? He asked. No. Good. I exhaled slowly, let the tension bleed out piece by piece. They're going to keep pushing, he said. I know. And I picked up my phone again, looked at the screen one more time. Then I held the power button. Waited. Screen went black. And they're not getting anything else from me, I said. Not tonight. Not like that. I set the phone down on the counter. Danny handed me a cup of coffee. Strong. Black. Exactly how I drank it after long shifts. I took it. Nodded once. We didn't talk about what happened after that. Didn't need to. Some things don't need words. I stood there in the quiet. The weight of the night settling into something more solid. Not confusion. Not anger. Control. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't reacting to them. I was deciding what came next. And they had no part in that decision anymore. I didn't turn my phone back on until the next morning. For a few seconds, nothing happened. Then it exploded. Notifications stacked faster than I could read them. Missed calls, voicemails, messages, dozens of them. I counted without opening anything. 58 missed calls from my father, 43 from my mother, 27 from Olivia. That didn't include the rest of the family. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't heard from in years suddenly had opinions. Call your parents. You've taken this too far. Your grandmother would be ashamed. I stared at the screen for a moment, then I turned it off again. Silence felt better. Danny didn't say anything. Just set a cup of coffee in front of me and sat across the table. They only know one version, he said eventually. They don't want the other one. He nodded. Then don't give it to them. That afternoon, I pulled out the box my grandmother left me. I hadn't touched it since the funeral. Didn't feel right before, now it did. Old photographs, letters, small things she kept over the years. Pieces of a life she never needed to explain. At the bottom, there was an envelope I didn't recognize. My name written on the front in her handwriting. I opened it carefully. One page, short, direct, Danny. By now, things may not be going the way your parents expected. Don't worry, I've taken care of everything. They will try to take what I've left you. Don't let them. Mr. Whitmore knows the full details. Trust him. I read it twice. Then a third time. She knew. Before any of this happened, she already knew what they would do. I looked up at Danny. I need to see that lawyer. The next morning, I walked into Gerald Whitmore's office. Old building, quiet. Smelled like paper and time. He stood when I came in. Late 60s, maybe older, calm. Mr. Carter, he said, I've been expecting you. You know what happened. Your grandmother predicted it almost exactly. I sat down across from him. Didn't say anything else. He pulled a document from his desk. Thick paper, official seals, the will. Your grandmother left her house to you, he said. Sole beneficiary. I didn't react right away, just looked at the paper. At approximately $650,000 in value, he continued. Free and clear. No division, none. I leaned back slightly. Processing. Why? Because you were the only one who showed up, he said simply. 3 years. You gave up your life to take care of her. No one else did. That landed heavy. He slid another page across the desk. There's also a clause. I looked at it. If any family member attempts to pressure, threaten, or coerce you into surrendering your inheritance, I kept reading. They forfeit any claim to the remaining assets of the estate. I looked up. She planned for this. Whitmore nodded once, very carefully. The door behind me opened. I turned. Aunt Ruth stepped inside. You made it, she said quietly. You knew, I said. She nodded, sat down beside me. Your grandmother asked me to be here when the time came. I looked between them. For how long? 3 years, Ruth said, since you moved in with her. She told me your parents wouldn't accept it, Ruth continued. That you'd need someone on your side. Why didn't you tell me? She made me promise. That tracked. My grandmother never did anything halfway. Whitmore folded his hands on the desk. Your family was informed the will existed, he said, but not its contents. They assumed. I said yes, and they built everything on that assumption. Another nod. I thought about the room, the chairs, the papers, the number my father threw out like it meant something. 400,000, all of it. Based on something they never actually confirmed. They tried to force me to sign, I said. Then they've already triggered the clause, Whitmore replied. I let that sit. Didn't rush it. Power shifts don't need to be loud to be real. Ruth reached over and squeezed my arm. Your grandmother's last wish, she said, voice softer now, was for you to know that you were enough, exactly as you are. I looked back at the document. My name. Her signature. Clear. Final. For the first time since that night, everything made sense. 4 days. That's all it took for them to go from control to panic. By the second day after my birthday, the tone of the messages changed. Less anger, more urgency, desperation creeping in around the edges. I turned my phone on just long enough to see it. Texts stacked on top of each other. Dad, we need to talk. There's been a misunderstanding. Mom, Danny, please. This isn't what we meant. Olivia, the lawyer says you're the only heir. That's not right. Call me. I read them once, then set the phone down. Funny how it's a misunderstanding now, Danny said from across the kitchen. They were pretty clear the other night. I didn't respond. Didn't need to. The next message came through before I could turn the phone off again. Dad, we're family. Don't let paperwork come between us. I let out a breath. Not a laugh. Not quite. Paperwork didn't do anything, I said quietly. They did. Danny nodded. Then don't play their game. I turned the phone off again. Silence. But silence wasn't enough for them. By the third day, they showed up. 3 knocks on the door, sharp, controlled. I already knew who it was before I checked. All 3 of them stood in the hallway. My father in front, my mother just behind him, Olivia off to the side, arms crossed tight. I opened the door halfway, didn't step back. Danny, my father said. His voice had changed, softer now, measured. We need to talk, so talk. He glanced past me, like he expected to be invited in. I didn't move. My mother stepped forward, hands clasped together like she was holding something fragile. Sweetheart, she said, voice shaking. The other night, we got carried away. I watched her. You tore my photos off the wall, I said. Her eyes flickered. I didn't mean in front of 200 people. Silence. She looked down for a second, then back up. We were upset. About what? She didn't answer. Olivia pushed forward then, stepping into the gap. I'm in trouble, she said. No performance this time. Just tension. Real trouble. I know. Her jaw tightened. Then help me. No. The word landed flat. Final. You don't understand, she snapped. Kyle and we made some bad calls. If I don't fix this, we lose everything. I leaned against the door frame. That's not my problem. Her expression shifted, anger bleeding through now. I'm your sister. And you took my keys out of my hand while Mom was tearing apart my life in front of a crowd. She flinched. Barely, but I saw it. My father stepped in again, trying to regain control. That house belongs to the family, he said. It belongs to me. That's not what your grandmother intended. She wrote it down. I said, had it notarized, witnessed. That can be contested. No, I said, it can't. His jaw tightened. My mother's voice cut in. Sharper now. You're being selfish. I looked at her. You demanded $400,000 for raising me. She opened her mouth, closed it again. That wasn't, you watched her take my car. I continued. You stood there while everything I've ever done got torn off a wall like it meant nothing. My voice didn't rise, didn't need to. And now you want to stand here and talk about family. My father's phone rang. He glanced down at it. Something changed in his face. He answered. Barbara now isn't. I could hear her through the speaker. Loud, angry. I just got off the phone with Whitmore, she said. Tell me it's not true? My father's grip tightened on the phone. It's complicated. No, it's not, she snapped. He said Danny is the sole beneficiary. The house is his, not yours, not the family's. Silence in the hallway. My mother went pale. Olivia looked between them, breathing faster now. And there's more, Barbara continued. That clause about coercion. If you tried to pressure him, you've already lost whatever claim you thought you had. My father didn't speak. Couldn't. I was there, Barbara said. I saw what you did. The whole family did. 200 people watched you try to humiliate your own son into signing something that was never yours. Her voice dropped colder. No one's on your side after this. The line went dead. My father lowered the phone slowly. For a second, no one moved. Then everything shifted. Not loud, not dramatic, just gone. Control, authority, certainty, all of it. I looked at them. Really looked, this time. My mother's hands were shaking. Olivia looked like she might break. My father just stood there, empty. I think you should go, I said. No one argued. No one pushed back. They just stood there for a moment longer. Then my father nodded once, and they left. I closed the door, locked it, leaned back against it, and let the silence settle. For the first time, they had nothing left to take. The legal side moved fast, faster than I expected. Within 48 hours of meeting Whitmore, the paperwork was filed, reviewed, and confirmed. The house was mine. No disputes, no gray areas, clean, final. I signed the transfer documents without hesitation. Each signature felt less like a victory and more like closure. Whitmore slid one more file across the desk. The vehicle, he said. We can address that as well. I looked at him. Your father had no legal authority to transfer ownership. The title is in your name, purchased with your funds. The transfer is invalid, so I can take it back. You can, he said, and I recommend you do. I nodded once. Let's do it. By the end of the week, it was handled. A police officer accompanied me to my parents' house. Procedure, nothing aggressive, just official. Still, it said everything that needed to be said. The house looked different when I pulled up. Same structure, same paint, but smaller, quieter, like something had been stripped out of it. Olivia answered the door for a second. We just stood there. She looked tired. Not the kind of tired you fix with sleep. The kind that sits behind your eyes and doesn't move. She held out the keys. Didn't say anything. I took them. Thanks, I said. And I meant it. Not for what she did. For not making it worse. She nodded once, turned. Walked back inside without another word. I didn't look past her, didn't need to. Some doors don't need to be opened again. I got back in my truck and drove off. Didn't check the mirrors, didn't slow down. That was the last time I saw that house. The fallout didn't stay contained. It spread, fast. 200 people had been in that room, 200 witnesses, and people talk. They always do. I didn't say anything, didn't post, didn't explain, didn't defend myself. I didn't have to. The story told itself. Aunt Ruth kept me updated. Not because I asked, because she knew I'd want the truth. Not the version my parents were spinning. Your father's losing clients, she told me over the phone a few days later. People don't trust him the same way. Makes sense. Real estate runs on reputation, trust, perception. You lose that. You lose everything. One of his long-term partners pulled out of a deal. She added, 50,000, just gone. I leaned back in my chair, didn't react, didn't celebrate. It wasn't satisfaction, just consequence. My mother didn't fare any better. Her social circle started closing ranks without her. Dinners canceled, invitations forgotten, calls that didn't get returned. The charity board she'd been part of for years quietly removed her. No announcement, no confrontation, just absence. People choose distance when they see something they can't ignore, and they had seen everything. Olivia's situation unraveled faster than the rest. Debt doesn't wait. It doesn't care about pride or family or excuses. Within a month, she and her husband were forced to sell their house. Couldn't keep up with the payments. Too much damage. Too little time. They moved back in with my parents. Full circle. Ruth told me that part quietly. We were sitting on my balcony, late afternoon. She blames you, Ruth said. I nodded once. Of course she does. She says if you had shared the inheritance, none of this would have happened. I let that sit for a second. Then I shook my head. The math doesn't work. It never did, Ruth said. We sat in silence after that, not uncomfortable, just honest. A week later, I got my truck back, fully, legally. No questions left, no arguments possible. The engine started the same way it always had, but it felt different, not because of the vehicle, because of what it represented. Control, ownership, something that was mine, and stayed mine. I drove for a while that day. No destination, just movement, letting everything settle, everything that had shifted in the last few weeks. It wasn't just about the house, or the money, or the car. It was about something simpler, something I should have understood a long time ago. You don't get respect by asking for it, you get it by deciding what you won't accept. By the end of the month, the situation had stabilized, not fixed, not repaired, just settled into a new reality. My parents stayed where they were, dealing with the consequences of their own decisions. Olivia stayed with them, trying to rebuild something out of what was left. And me, I moved forward without them. I moved into my grandmother's house a month later, didn't rush it, took my time packing, sorting through what mattered and what didn't. There wasn't much I needed to bring. Most of what I owned felt temporary anyway. That place wasn't. The first night I stayed there alone. It was quiet in a way I hadn't felt in years. Not empty, not heavy, just still. The kind of quiet that lets you think without bracing for something. I stood in the doorway of the living room for a while before turning on the lights. Nothing had changed since the last time I was there with her. Her chair by the window, the blanket folded over the armrest, the small table where she used to keep her tea. I didn't move anything that first night, just sat down and let it be what it was. Over the next few weeks, I made small changes. Nothing drastic. Fresh paint in the bedroom, new curtains in the living room, fixed things that needed fixing, left everything else alone. Her presence stayed in the details, the way the kitchen was organized. The bird feeder outside the window, the worn edges of the wooden table where we used to sit and talk. It didn't feel like I was taking over the space. It felt like I was continuing something. Danny started coming by on Saturdays. Didn't announce it, didn't make a big deal out of it, just showed up with groceries or takeout and stayed for a few hours. We didn't talk about the past much, didn't need to. He'd sit on the porch sometimes, feet up on the railing, watching the trees like he'd been doing it his whole life. You picked a good place, he said once. I nodded. Yeah, that was enough. Ruth came by on Sundays, always with something in her hands, food, usually, or something she thought the house needed, but didn't want to say directly. She didn't push, didn't ask questions I didn't want to answer. She just stayed, talked when it made sense, stayed quiet when it didn't. Family, without the conditions. I didn't realize how much that mattered until I had it. A few weeks after I moved in, I sent one message. Took longer to write than it should have. Deleted it twice, rewrote it once. Then I sent it. I don't hate any of you, but I won't go back to what things were. You disowned me publicly. You asked me to pay for being your son. You stood there while everything I've ever done was treated like it didn't matter. I'm not carrying that anymore. If you ever want a real relationship, no conditions, no leverage, no expectations, then you know how to reach me. Until then, don't. I didn't wait for a response, didn't expect one, turned the phone off after I sent it. That part was done. Work felt different after that. Same hours, same pressure, same pace. But I wasn't carrying anything extra into it anymore. No background noise, no second guessing, just focus, clear, simple. I started picking up extra shifts again, not because I had to, because I wanted to. Being there, helping people who actually needed it felt real. No performance, no judgment, just action. 3 months passed before I went through the last box my grandmother left behind. I'd been avoiding it. Not intentionally, just waiting. When I finally opened it, the smell of old paper hit first. Letters, photos, small things she'd kept over decades. At the bottom, the letter, the same one I'd read before, worn now from being handled too many times. I sat on the porch with it in my hands, the sun starting to drop behind the trees. Didn't rush it, just read it again. Live like you deserve to. I stayed there for a while after that, watching the light change, listening to the quiet, thinking about everything that had led to this. 32 years of trying to earn something that was never going to be given. Trying to fit into a version of myself that only worked if I stayed smaller than I was. It took that night, standing in front of 200 people, while my family tried to erase me for it to finally click. I never needed their permission. Not to matter, not to exist, not to choose something different. My grandmother knew that. That's what she gave me. Not the house, not the money, proof. Proof that someone saw me exactly as I was, and decided that was enough. A bird landed on the feeder outside the window. I watched it for a second. Then another joined it. She used to sit out here every morning and refill that thing, like it was part of her routine. I'd kept it going without really thinking about it. Some habits don't need explaining. I'm figuring it out, I said quietly. Didn't matter that no one answered. Some things aren't meant to be heard out loud. I folded the letter carefully, pressed it flat, held it there for a second longer before setting it down. The sun dipped lower. The sky shifted into something softer, calmer. I leaned back in the chair and let it happen. No rush, no pressure, just time moving forward. That's the part people don't talk about. What happens after everything breaks, after the confrontation, after the decisions, after you walk away. It's not dramatic, it's not loud, it's quiet. It's building something new out of what's left, and deciding, piece by piece, what you're willing to carry with you. If there's anything I took from all of this, it's simple. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. Sometimes it's the only way you survive. That's my story. If it meant something to you, stick around. There's more where this came from. This story is fictional and created for entertainment purposes only.